see if video holds. So I had a very nice view until the neighbors started doing some last minute yard work. So welcome to Inside My Room. Thank you everyone here for joining us tonight. This is the introduction to the competition, the Nurturing the Wild Photography Competition. And we'll have presenting tonight Faraaz Abdool and Eladio Fernandez. I'll just start off with a few remarks. And so let me just do some quick intros. I'll say a few minutes about how we're pretty excited as a campaign to be hosting this and supporting this. And then we'll let our illustrious presenters tell you a little bit more about conservation photography and our competition. So just to get started here, like I said, my name is Mark Gibson. I am the volunteer director of the Nurture Nature campaign. I'm doing my PhD research project on the Trinidad and Tobago wildlife trade. Along the way, that had me learn a lot about photography as one way to help document the things that are occurring. So I'm far from anything professional, but I really do appreciate photography and have really come to understand that not just anyone could be doing this well, but depending on what you're doing it for, maybe something simple, even a mobile phone, can be pretty powerful. So that started an interest for us with Nurture Nature over a year and a half ago to see if we could have a photography competition as a way to promote conservation in Trinidad and Tobago. So along the way, we have met some fantastic people who are joining us today. Tonight, you'll be hearing from Eladio Fernandez speaking to us about what is conservation photography. He is an associate fellow at the iLCP, which is an incredible organization promoting conservation photography, and a notable associate fellow for being from the Caribbean. He's also a naturalist, author, filmmaker, scientific researcher, and I'm very excited to see his upcoming documentary work on, well, as the slide says, a variety of subjects. So thank you for joining us here tonight, Eladio, and you'll be up next in just a few minutes. And then after Eladio, we'll have Faraaz Abdool. If you are a photographer in Trinidad and Tobago, of course, I think you all would know Faraaz Abdool, incredible wildlife photographer. He is the manager of our Nurturing the Wild photo competition, and he'll be speaking to you about the competition overview. He is also, beyond a photographer, a fantastic conservation advocate. We've hosted him previously in a great webinar on songbirds and their loss in Trinidad and Tobago, and has authored a pretty great book on birding, casual birding in Trinidad and Tobago, and is very, very knowledgeable as a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Bird Status and Distribution Committee. So thank you for joining us, Faraaz and Eladio. I'll just say a few remarks. For us as an interest, as a campaign, we talk often about what is a great conservation image, talking about the power of an image in one situation versus another. Stunning photography can grab you, but it also needs to, these days, if you're not part of the solution, you might be part of the problem. And I like how conservation photography poses this idea that you can represent nature, but you need to put the conservation message behind it. So we started looking at how images could be used, and came along the way to a conservation photography competition. A lot of this discussion really came back to how is photography used in conservation, biodiversity conservation. The image before you was one that came up for me. It might not look like much, but in 1879, this blew people's minds, and is one of the reasons why we have Yosemite National Park in the United States today. That was the power of an image. So we know right from the beginning, as this foundational experience in American conservation movement, that photography matters. How do we find another view from an inspiration point? That's a trickier thing, but it matters in many, many ways. We've also come along the way with so many technological advances that images are far beyond just advocacy. But in contemporary work, we use it a lot in research. So you have camera trap monitoring in Trinidad and Tobago. Elsewhere, you can use drones to map for changing landscapes, deforestation. I believe this is Southeast Asia. And as many of you guys attending, I would imagine, know of iNaturalist.org or something like one of the many other organizations actually that offer machine learning. But taxonomic identification, visual images can now be used to ID species in minutes for laypersons, and it's pretty magical. And then, of course, in contemporary advocacy, not just creating an image like in our Yosemite case, but using images in more active forms. A power of an image, right, is nonprofit advocacy, helping people understand that a tiger picture that goes on your Instagram is hiding a whole lot of cruelty behind it. We also have photography, very important for these days, forensic crime scene analysis. And then in the traditional sense also, shifting cultural mindsets. This is where we can come back to how do we produce more images that change how we see the world. View from Inspiration pointed that, and then more recently we have this most famous iconic image, Earthrise by Bill Anders in 1968. In the US at least, this is pretty much synonymous with the rise of the environmental movement, having that perspective that we can just be a pale blue dot. So the power of the image matters so very much, but it is not something that just anyone can go do. This is a comic that I really like, Pearls Before Swine. And if you're reading it while I'm talking here, right, everyone has picked up a camera at some point and said, wow, and isn't it just as easy as pushing this button? No, it's definitely not. It, as you know, as Pearls is joking, right? Like, you've learned about focal length, aperture, ISO, that sort of stuff. Yeah, you need to know. So our hope was to come up with find a way to bring more, and there's technical aspects to consider, but finding ways to just get people out there and press the little doohickey, right? So that is my opener here for people that I would far rather hear from. So let me pass this baton now on to Eladio, who's going to tell us really about the genre of conservation photography as it's arisen in recent years. So Faraaz, you're just going to take the screen share, yeah?
Yep. You should be seeing my screen now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Eladio. Take it away.
Okay, folks. Number one, I'm grateful to have an honor to have been invited to present today. I often think that, you know, we're all members of the Caribbean, but for some reason, every island in the Caribbean lives with their back turned, you know, for each other, and this is a great, you know, initiative and a great way to come together. And I think the Caribbean, you know, needs to promote these things and present, you know, together as you know, we're an archipelago of islands, we're neighbors, and so I'm just grateful to be here. So my name is Eladio Fernandez. I'm a member of the International League of Conservation Photographers, the iLCP. If you're not familiar, the iLCP is an organization that basically has 130 members. A lot of them are National Geographic photographers. We'll be talking a little bit more in depth about the iLCP further in the presentation. But basically, so what is conservation photography? We hear so much about, you know, nature photography, what is conservation photography? Can we pass the slide for us, please? So I started like everybody else. I started photographing nature. I was a nature photographer. I was, enamored, in love with the beauty of nature, with animals, with plants. I started with birds, and started to make my way slowly to other groups, landscapes. Every item or every subject that we pursue had a different, different settings that you needed for your camera. You needed basically to learn that language. Like it's like starting photography over and over several times with each one of the subjects. So, after 10, 15 years of looking at my work, everything I was photographing was just one side of nature, the beautiful side, like many of us. But then, through that many years, you start seeing not necessarily the beautiful side, but the ugly side of nature, or sometimes the ugly side of man, in this eternal conflict, man versus nature. So I started photographing single images of, conservation issues, environmental issues, to complement the beautiful images that I was taking. I would run into a patch of forest that had been deforested, and I'd stop, take the time, photograph it. At the time, I was working with some researchers from the U.S., ornithologists, but they would ask me to use some of my images, and they would also ask, do you have images of the habitat, the landscape, the food this bird eats? And my answer would always be no. So I made a little shift in my mind to keep an eye out for these things. So when I came across them, to document them, register them, so that I could supply imagery for these researchers, and thus these images started having purpose. So when I joined the iLCP 6 years ago, and I was from the Caribbean, thrown with this really, with this group of really high professional conservation photographers from all over the world. I came to realize that there's so much more to just the type of images that I was obtaining. So yes, I had these single images, but I needed to compile stories. Can we go to the next slide, please, for us? Okay, so what does being a conservation photography entail? Basically, this is a full-time job for me. Everybody in iLCP, that's one of the requirements. Photography has to be your full-time job. You can share that with conservation, with being a commercial photographer, but you have to be, most of your living has to come from photography, basically. And I have to promote myself. I have to propose projects. I'm also an advisor, an environmental advisor for an NGO. I proposed for a number of years. I mean, I have 9 photographic books. So I had to come up with these projects that I would find corporate sponsors for. And of course, that would help me survive for a full year. And I self-published 9 books in 12 years. And that's, I mean, I'm impressed by myself, but it's not easy. And maybe my books aren't, the best quality photography ever. I had a time slot in which I needed to produce these in order to make a living, but it was a decision I made. So money for, if you're a nature or a conservation photographer, it's unless you're like one of the top, 20, 30 guys in the world, you're not making a lot of money. So you need to be constantly creative. And as a conservation photography, I mean, what responsibilities do we carry? That's the other item in this list. There's truth, ethics. Conservation photography is basically a close cousin of journalism, photojournalism. And, as a photojournalist, you have to tell the truth. You can't stage, you can't produce imagery. Basically, you're a witness. Your camera is a tool, to help you document something that's going on. And you have to be as accurate as you can. You have to, interview people. You have to talk to people. You have to, get both sides of the story. Your photography has to reflect both sides of the story. And this is part of the responsibility that we have as conservation photographers. Okay, so it may not be, a civil war, but it's a forest in being hacked away by someone that wants to use the wood for to sell. But that's a battle all on its own, and you have to respect the person who's doing it, for whatever reasons he's doing it, and you're basically there to document what's going on. And so that's the truth in conservation photography. And you also have to have many ethical considerations. And ethics in conservation photography it grows a little bit with information every day. Many years ago, it was a free-for-all. People had no considerations. You're manipulating animals, baiting animals, doing all kinds of stuff. But nowadays, we want to do things better. We want to have and this is the number one rule in ethics. The welfare of the animal is above everything else. So, it's above you getting your image. Is the animal stressed? Is the animal being harmed? Do you not have that information? Are you doubtful about that information? Well, then you need to err on the side of being prudent and making sure that no harm is coming to your subject. And that's very important. And that applies to humans as well. In the constant battle between man and nature, man is an element usually in every story. And you need to be respectful. Poverty is a tough situation. And, you should approach your subjects without judging. Someone is in an entirely different situation than you are. And he may be cutting that forest because he needs to feed, 3 children, his wife, his mother. He has no alternative. And you need to be respectful of that truth, of that person's truth. So, sorry, we have a dog around here. So, in ethics now, more, like I said, more and more, there are all these issues that we need to keep in mind. For example, is baiting an animal for a photo, for a photograph, is that the correct thing to do? Is using flashes for night animals the correct thing to do? Is photographing nesting birds or an animal's den, or getting close to the den or the nest? Is cutting, if you see a landscape, but there's all of a sudden there's like a certain twigs that are in the way that you think from this plant, that if they weren't there, the photograph would end up being a lot more pristine, and you cut those twigs. Are you committing an infraction by doing so? Are you hurting the plant? And so is are you modifying the landscape? So there are all these ethical considerations that one has to have present in every single moment today while doing conservation photography. And everybody has a different threshold. Your sensitivity to the welfare of an animal is going to be different to the person next to you, and that's okay. But it's very important to keep all these things in mind. I'm a part of the ethics committee for the iLCP, and we just revised our ethic principles. And they haven't been published publicly yet. They will be. But we made a document that's called Ethical Considerations in Conservation Photography. And basically, we listed a number of situations that we all encounter on a daily basis. But there are no hard answers to all these questions. Am I too close to a nest? How close is too close? There are so many variables to a question like that. What species is it? What country? Are you violating any laws? Does the animal look stressed? Is the animal accustomed to people? Is it nesting? Does it have eggs? Does it have chicks? So there are so many variables that we could not, provide a clean-cut answer to, but we provided considerations. So basically, we invite people, how close is too close to a nest? Consider, is the animal stressed? Are you altering behavior? Did he stop feeding the chicks because you're too close? So that document basically invites, every time you ask a question, to think about, what's going on and whether you're affecting that animal, that plant, that landscape. And that is the best way we found to approach this. Also, must conservation photographers only photograph flora, fauna, or can a human element also be included? Yes, it must be included. In conservation photography, 9 times out of 10, there's a human factor to every story. Yes, we have an endangered animal. We want to cover the natural history of that endangered animal, but we also want to cover what the threats to that particular animal are. And usually, if it's not climate change, which is man-made, it's a direct situation that comes from us humans. So, and that is part of the story. What considerations must one offer if photographing people? I reviewed, I just mentioned a few of these. Ask before you take a photograph. It's important. Ask that person's permission. Have a conversation with that person. This is especially important with indigenous cultures, to respect their traditions. Just basically keep respect, as your number one item when dealing with people, and ask for their permission. If they say no, guess what? It's not happening. You're not taking their photograph. Do you want to pursue and have a longer conversation to explain why you're taking the photograph? Yes, you can do that. If that produces a positive outcome in your favor of covering that person of your story, great. If it, then do not be pushy, move on, and something else will present itself that'll help you show the impact of humans with your subject. So, traditions also, like if we're covering like carnivals and stuff like that, let's research. We need to research about the animal, the plant, the landscape, the place we're visiting, the place that we're covering, the cultural event that we're documenting. Let's try to learn before we go out there with a camera. All of that is very important in understanding and finding the stories. Faraaz, can we pass the slide? Thank you. So, I said I was photographing and I had a collection of single images of conservation issues. And we're gonna present to you an example of 3 images related to Nicauli. Nicauli is this flamingo you see in the image. This flamingo was poached from a wild population. I'm working on that story now. And basically the flamingo was taken to was poached. The environmental police managed to confiscate the animal and take it to the local zoo. I worked with the zoo, so someone at the zoo gave me a call and said, we have this situation. Are you interested in covering it? I said yes, so I came over. Relationship with organizations like the zoo, botanical gardens, NGOs are really important so that you can gain access to stories and conservation issues. So Nicauli came to the zoo. She was very weak. She couldn't stand on her own. For a flamingo, that's a death sentence, because when the flamingo can't stand on its own, the legs basically become asleep and they can't get up ever again. So part of the therapy this flamingo received was placing it in a sling. Of course, this is a sling made from a burlap bag they had at the zoo. And this is what the flamingo is being fed, which is a mixture of beets for the keratin and color with animal protein, obviously a lot of water. Nicauli started to make a recovery, and she had a broken down wing. I managed to photograph the care of the caretakers at the zoo, while changing the bandages, and it's the daily life of Nicauli at the zoo going through this rehabilitation process. She had been only maybe a week at the zoo when this happened. The next image, please. Nicauli, unfortunately, is one of many animals that get poached, that are so stressed beyond recovery or so damaged that they, despite the efforts of their caretakers, the animal passed. So, this is a hard photograph. I thought, for a while whether to take it or not. I chose to photograph from different angles. It was basically laying on the dissection table on top of a plastic bag. They wanted to see what why the animal had died finally. And I took this picture of Nicauli. I made 3 posts. The first image you saw with the caretaker holding Nicauli in his hands, the image of the flamingo in the sling with his food, and this one. And you might think, my God, these are horrible images in terms of the subject matter. I mean, this is tough to look at. These images are horrible. They're not pretty. But, in the captions, and this is another aspect that's really important, to be transparent and clear and be able to produce good captioning for the images you present. They told Nicauli's story, and there was no happy ending. And these 3 images received more likes that year than any other image of a beautiful landscape or beautiful bird photograph or even a live flamingo out in the wild. Why? Because people connected with Nicauli's story, and they felt, mad, upset about the poaching in the Dominican Republic of flamingos. I discovered we have 28 hotels with 200 flamingos in captivity. There's no precedent in the Caribbean for something like that. And now the Ministry of the Environment because they saw their images and saw how many people were interested in this subject, decided to start a program of getting all the hotels to donate the flamingos with some money for rehabilitation. And now we're going to start a rehabilitation program at the zoo to release those captive flamingos. Because the hotel industry has been so hardly hit by COVID, they're not getting fined, but they're making financial contributions to compensate. It was also the ministry's fault, not the present one, but the last governments for not properly supervising or letting this slide into what it is, this huge problem that it is today. So conservation photography, as you have seen, is basically producing imagery with conservation goals. Your images have purpose. You've come from taking images to help portray the beauty of nature, now to represent subjects and situations that merit our attention and our actions. And they merit that we form an opinion on these subjects. Social media can be, something very superficial, or it can be a great tool for conservation. And exposing stories and exposing situations that need our attention and our actions is a great way to use social media. So one of my colleagues at iLCP, Neil Ever Osborne, can you go back for a second for us? I'm not okay. Said blending nature photography with a social documentary approach. It is an issue-oriented and proactive storytelling platform that allows photographers to put their images to work. And that's basically it. Images with purpose. That's the phrase we use at iLCP. Next image, please. So in my experience, this is the cover of Hispaniola, one of the first book I published. It was actually published by Harvard University Press, so that's the only book that's not independently published, in 2007. And that book basically was a journey. It's called Hispaniola: A Journey Through Island Biodiversity. And I wanted to show some of the hotspots, not only in the Dominican Republic, but in Haiti, that are worth preserving, and an inventory. And in each hotspot, each location, I photographed. I had a representation of flora, fauna, landscapes, which basically provided the public with an idea of why we need to preserve these places. This book was crucial because there was no other publication like it before, and it served as a guide for many people to get into photography, for many people to go visit some of these places. And nowadays we have clubs that only do bird photography. We have clubs that do landscape photography. We have photography clubs that only do traditions, cultural traditions. So I don't want to say that it's all because of me, but this book actually helped put on the map a lot of really important places and a lot of really important flora and fauna that required the attention of the public. Before that, images of birds, mammals, plants, orchids were not very common. So this helped put them on the map. Next slide, please. Okay, so some images, sometimes some conservation images, you see this, you probably are like, this doesn't say anything to you. But if you read, if you hear what this is, it might. So captioning again and text that accompanies an image is extremely important. What looks like a peaceful scene at night with what looks like a river next to the beach or something like that, with something that we can't make up in the middle of it. That's actually a freshwater eel trap. Dominican Republic and Cuba, Haiti, there's a big eel uh, uh, business going on presently. In fact, right now I'm on the beach near where some of the fishermen are working, and I will go out tonight to photograph them. And when you see an image like this by itself, it might not say anything, but when you insert an image like this with a series that tells a story of eels, then it all makes sense. Next image, please. It's important that we also document the work of the people who are actually doing conservation. This is Marta Kurdi. She works for the Peregrine Fund, and she comes to the Dominican Republic, and she's involved with tracking Ridgway's hawk. So, I took a whole day to went out with her, and I basically did everything she did. I went out with her to the field. She uses a bicycle. I managed to get another one. So we biked all the way to the location where she was going to be monitoring the birds. We left the bikes with some community people that she knew. We took a walk around, and I basically, I was a fly on the wall. I basically used my camera and I told her beforehand, act normally, do what you have to do, and I'll be taking pictures. And what are these images used for? Well, that organization needs funding. They need to also explain to people what is it that they're doing with the money. So, if you collaborate with an NGO and you provide the imagery for the NGO, number one, they're going to give you access to a story. Now I have access to Ridgway's hawk. It's a beautiful conservation story with so far a happy ending. But they're also, I made an arrangement with them. They can use my images in exchange, and they use the images for fundraising, and those funds keep the project running every year. So this is part of conservation photography. Next image, please. I also use my camera as a tool for science. You might have heard Mark mention that I'm a researcher. So I don't have an official degree in biology, but I just published in 2019. I co-authored a publication, an article describing 3 new species of Aristolochia or pipe vines. These are this is not one of the ones I described. This is one of the ones I'm going to describe in a new article. But your camera can also be a tool for science. And science, the more we know about our subjects scientifically, the more we understand their requirements. So, one of the ways I contribute is, for example, this work I'm doing with Aristolochia, with pipe vines, is describing new species. And obviously these are species that were not on anybody's map before. So now that I'm able to portray, them, and if they are charismatic, like this group of flowers, people might pay attention and say, I want to cultivate them. Where are they? Are they threatened? What's threatening them? So, that may create in itself conservation actions while using your camera as a tool for science. In here, I'm also, displaying a little bit of the interaction between a pollinator and these group of plants. They attract flies with scent, and obviously on the first day the flower opens, this scent is very powerful and attracts a lot of pollinators. And so this image was important for me to get in motion what the pollinators are like all over the flower. Next image, please. Not everybody has to do science, use your camera for science. If you like science, that's a valid use of your time and an image on the way. I work in Haiti and conservation. I support Haiti National Trust now has bought from locals a 2 square kilometer patch of primary forest. It's on a mountaintop. As we all know, Haiti is going through a serious situation in terms of deforestation. The numbers vary significantly depending on whether you are referring to primary forest or if you're just forest cover in general. There's different ways of measuring it, and it gives you different results. Depends what your narrative is. But on the way to this place called Grand Bois, which is Haiti's first nature reserve, it was impressive when we flew there on a helicopter to see, the level of deforestation. So an image, a bird's view of what that situation is like can either create empathy for the work that you're doing and Haiti, or it might also have an adverse reaction and say, okay, so there's nothing left to preserve. But clearly that is not the intent of this image. It's just basically to let everybody know, as a part of the Grand Bois, that even if it's 2 square kilometers, we managed to find 30 species of plants that we still don't know what they are. So, these, even if it's a tiny fragment of forest, it's hugely important to a country that has suffered severely from deforestation like Haiti. Next image, please.
Well, you're all done here, Eladio.
Okay,
thank
so hopefully everybody has now a clear view of what conservation photography is all about. And I'll just close by saying that, switching from, a nature photography to a conservation photography requires a change in your mindset. So don't be frustrated if you feel like you can't get out of the pretty pictures and pursuing pretty pictures, but keep at it. And one day you'll wake up and that switch will be thrown, and you'll keep these conservation issues in mind, and you'll see that your photography will start to reflect them, and hopefully you'll be a conservation photographer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eladio. That's something that I have to, I've been trying to come to terms with for myself, because it's difficult, it's difficult to try to even document some of the things that you can see out there that they're hurtful to look at, deforestation, slash and burn agriculture, garbage, all of these things. But yeah, hopefully we'll get to that point sooner rather than later, because these stories need to be told. So anyway, guys, yeah, I'm Faraaz, as introduced by Mark, and yeah, I'm here to talk about the competition. Just give you really an overview of what we're doing here, right? So yeah, this competition is really the result of a three-way partnership between myself and the Nurture Nature campaign and the Trinidad and Tobago Photographic Society. And why did we really choose to partner up to come here? Now, like, I know that there are a lot of talented storytellers in Trinidad and Tobago, but I found that there isn't really a collective direction or cohesion for a particular purpose. So, like, we have so much diversity here in terms of habitats, people, culture, flora and fauna, that frankly isn't seen in many other parts of the world, right? And I found in my experience that it's often tourists that come here, and they know a lot more about our biodiversity than we have. than, you know, that we are aware about, and we've lived here for our entire lives. And there's so many like environmental atrocities being committed, and yeah, there's been outrage, but I found that it hasn't really been organized in a sense, you know. And I don't know if you're aware about, let's just say as an example, I was looking at Google Earth yesterday or the day before, and I saw the Aripo Savanna. I don't know if you'll have ever been there or when last you've been there, but the government is building a huge highway that's going to bisect this scientific reserve, which also happens to be the last remaining patch of wet savanna in the country, right? So there has to be some kind of collective outrage that's organized, and you know, people have to know, people have to care, and in terms of a large scale, like a really large scale effort, in terms of, well, does everyone know what is in the Aripo Savanna? Does everyone know how to find the Aripo Savanna? Like these are places that should be popular, right? We need to know about the specific animals that live there, the specific plants, all the ground orchids, the sundew, and everything like that. But anyway, so what we really need to do is to have all our fellow citizens to know more about our nature, because our nature is our natural heritage, right? Like, yeah, I know that most of us are here because of European colonization a few hundred years ago, but we have a responsibility to know what we share our space with, right? Every blackbird isn't a blackbird. Every white bird isn't an egret. You know, every snake isn't out to kill you. All bush is not the same bush. All of these things, right? So we have to observe nature more carefully, and we have to observe nature with a different eye, right? So like knowing more about our situation here, and we try to kind of conceptualize a means by which we can change how we view, and by extension how we interact with the natural world. So it's in that vein that we came upon the idea to host a photography competition, specifically one that highlights nature and how we interact with it. So like we're hoping by that, you know, by launching this competition, we can encourage everyone to spend at least a little more time observing nature with a critical eye. Sorry about that. So yeah, once we begin to observe, we're going to start to understand the linkages between, let's say, a plant and an insect, and then an insect and a bird and a fungus, like a mushroom or something like that, right? And after observation, ideally, is going to come a sense of caring for nature, which is, you know, that's our ultimate goal, right? We're living in the Anthropocene, and species are crumbling across the world, and it's easy to feel powerless, but we can very easily make a difference to what we have right in our backyard, right? So yeah, as the slide says, we want people to experience, explore, and reflect on our wild places and species, and we have so many. I mean, I photograph birds a lot, so that's kind of like my specialty. And I'll tell you, the entire continent of North America, from Mexico goes straight up to the Arctic Circle, has about 1,000 species of birds. We here in our tiny 2 islands, we're closing in on 500. So that's pretty much half of what's in the entire North American continent in such a very tiny space. So yeah, we have an unparalleled level of biodiversity, and this competition would like to highlight that. Right. Remember, we are islands that are sitting on the South American continental shelf. So it renders us very, very different from the other islands in the Caribbean, right? And we'd also like to foster new modes of photography in this country, right? As Eladio was saying, it's not just about the pretty pictures, but it's about the whole story, right? So which gets me to our categories, right? We have 3 categories that you could enter in, and each has two age divisions. So we got photographers of all ages are welcome to enter. We have adult categories and we have youth categories, right? So our 3 categories are, first of all, captured lives. So that's really like, you know, we want submissions that tell stories about the lives of captive animals, of traded animals in Trinidad and Tobago, right? So we want, let's just say, think about depicting the experiences of animals. So from their perspective, you know, tell that story, tell their story. You know, what is their life like to live on a leash or in a cage or with their wings clipped or something like that, right? Of course, with each of these categories, please, the importance of a caption can never be understated, right? Write a wonderful caption that was going to go with the image to tell the story, right? Second category is wild and beautiful, and what we want to do here is to tell the story about the incredible ecotourism potential offered by the wild places of Trinidad and Tobago, right? So yeah, so if you want to have just a photograph of something that's so beautiful, whether it's a river, whether it's a beach, a landscape, an animal, right? Something that is a known ecotourism draw for people to leave wherever they live, to fly a few thousand kilometers or miles or whichever system you use to come here to enjoy our nature, right? Again, please feel free to include a nice descriptive caption and or a photo location, right? Because we want to enhance that storytelling potential of the image, right? The third category is biodiversity in danger. And here we want to tell stories about the wildlife that's either known or suspected to be severely affected by human activities in the country, right? So we're looking at, you know, wild animals and plants in the natural habitats, right? Or even the human interactions that threaten them, right? So again, for each of these categories, please feel free to include a caption, because the caption is also going to influence how the judges view the picture. Because remember, the story that you're telling is a combination of the images and the words that you submit alongside. All right. So just a couple of examples here, right? For captured lives, feel free to include animals in cages. You know, it might be something that's culturally normal, right? I use the word normal very loosely, right? I also use the word culture very loosely, right? But yeah, you can feel free to look at our Songbird webinar that we did a few months ago for more information on that, right? Just we wanna. I'm hoping to see a lot of pictures that tug at my heartstrings, you know, that really give us a make us think about why are we doing this, right? So yeah, as Eladio was saying, you know, get to know your NGOs that are dealing with this, the zoos, the rehabilitation centers, because this is a picture of the first albatross that was ever recorded in Trinidad and Tobago, and someone caught it and clipped its wings, and the stress of all of that eventually killed the bird because it had no other injuries other than that, right? Wild and beautiful is the category to show off our ecotourism potential. And we mentioned drone photography a little bit earlier, and I'll tell you that landscape is the only type of drone photography that is going to be considered to be ethical, right? We want We don't want drones to get too close to wildlife and disturb nesting birds and so on, right? So yeah, under no circumstances that we should use drones to photograph wildlife, right, or animals. So yeah, it's ecotourism, right? Ecotourism. A lot of people come here to see turtles. A lot of people come here to see our scarlet ibis, to go on the tours and everything. Hopefully these things are going to be open soon again, right? And also, you know, landscapes. Visit untouched places, right? Showcase that raw beauty that we have in our nature, right? Biodiversity in danger. You can seek out endangered species like this. This is critical. I'm going to say two things at the same time. Critically endangered Trinidad piping guans, right? You can seek out situations like these. These are invasive species that are out competing our native seed eaters, right? Or you can, you know, seek to do something that's a little bit different, right? Of course, the cat here is not the problem, but it's the people who put the cats outside, right? Free roaming cats are incredibly dangerous to the ecosystem, and that tells a story here. It has a migratory shorebird that just arrived, right? Yeah, sometimes scenes that you might initially pass up. You should maybe take a try and photograph and tell a story. Why did this turtle die? You know, you might investigate it a little bit and find some plastic bag in its throat, and you can tell that story. So here are just a slate of our three, as Mark said, illustrious judges, right? Juliet Haddad, Eladio Fernandez, and Georgina Stapler, right? We want to ensure that the standard of this competition is truly world class, right? Yeah, we have a few sponsors. We'd like to thank them: Hardcore Epson, Republic Bank, Sustainable Innovation Initiatives, Nanan's Carony Bird Sanctuary Tours, and of course the Nurture Nature campaign, right? So we have 3 levels of sponsorships available, right? And with the tiers, the different tiers there: gold, silver, and bronze, right? We only have 1 gold left over. But yeah, so for anyone watching and you're interested in sponsoring this and you think it's a worthy initiative, feel free to shoot me an email or a message, right? Of course, in terms of prizes, we have cash prizes for each adult division, and we have not cash prizes for youth divisions, right? But we're doing something a little bit different. For the first place in each youth category, right, we're going to have experience-based prizes, so which we think are going to be a little bit more effective than cash prizes for children, right? So when I say experience-based, I'm talking about you're going to go on a boat just like this with Nanan stores on the Carony Bird Sanctuary, right, and see scarlet ibis and flamingos and all of these things, right? You're going to go to Bush Island and see some critically endangered monkeys, right? Or you can go to Little Tobago and photograph tropic birds, like as the header image for this competition. All right, so we have a few different prizes for youth. Only the first prize winners are eligible for the experience-based prizes, unfortunately. We have a grand prize, hardcore grand prize, valued at $6,000 TT, as well as a professional photo printer courtesy Epson. And we have a People's Choice Award, and the voting for the People's Choice Award is going to be open for approximately 1 month after the shortlisted images are released. So a few key dates to know, right? This competition opens for submissions from the 1st of January. Early bird submissions end on the 1st of February, right? But the competition remains open until the 15th of March. Right, the shortlist is announced on the 1st of May, after which you can vote for your favorite picture, and that the winner of that would get the People's Choice Prize, right? Our grand awards ceremony, winners announcement, we'll see how the pandemic is doing, but it might end up being virtual, right? That's going to be announced on World Environment Day on June the 5th. All right, in terms of entry fees, if you're thinking about it, if you enter before February 1st, or anytime between January 1st and February 1st, if you are under 18, you are eligible to enter for free. But if you are over 18, if you are legally an adult, you pay 25 TT dollars per entry. And after that, and from February 1st to March 15th, each entry in the adult division costs $55, and for the youth, $25, right? We have a limit, unfortunately, of 3 pictures per category. So the max you can submit is 9. So that's 3 images in each of the 3 categories, right? Each image is going to be subjected to an ethical and quality review before even being passed on to the judges, right? So you can, of course, learn a lot more about this process if you visit the website, right? The website is tt-ps.org, right? And just hit on the Nurturing the Wild image on the top, and it'll take you to the homepage of the competition, right? One thing I must mention is the use of pictures after this whole competition is we're going to be using it for exhibition, right? So online exhibition of shortlisted images, winning pictures, and also the pictures are going to be available for use by the Nurture Nature campaign for nonprofit advocacy, right? Of course, this is in terms of environmental advocacy, right? To try to change attitudes and so on. Here we have some examples of how pictures have been used by the Nurture Nature campaign over the last few months into a couple of years that Nurture Nature has been doing stellar work to raise awareness about the plight of the animals in this country. All right, so at this point, I'd like to stop and open it up to any questions that anyone may have. And thank you also for your time. And yeah, let me just see. I'm seeing a few questions in the Q&A, right? Biodiversity in Trinidad, if I can name a few places. Now, and absolutely anywhere from Ikaka straight up to Charlottesville, wherever there is nature, you can find biodiversity, even in your own backyard, right? So let's see, the Arepo Savannas is designated an environmentally sensitive area. Kindly clarify your comment that a highway will be built through it. Well, I don't know for sure if the highway is going to be built to completion, but as it is right now from Google Earth, the entire Arepo Savanna is almost completely cut in 2 pieces. All right, so designations are one thing, but we have to have attitudes of responsible attitudes need to be adopted by the people who are making decisions, right? At this point, the competition is only for persons living in Trinidad and Tobago, and not the neighboring Caribbean islands as it stands right now. However, in the future, depending on how this goes, we are open to look to opening it up to the region, right? Which I think is going to be necessary at some point. I would love to do that, to include the rest of the Caribbean. And the entry fees that I said just now, yes, they are per photo, right? Let me just check the chat. The word limit for the caption, we're looking at between maybe around 50 to 300 words. So you can tell the story, provide a backstory, say what happened after, There is no limit except for the word limit. But we're not going to be too strict about enforcing the word limit. All right. So if you think that a few extra words is going to help, feel free. If anyone has any other questions, please, for me or Eladio, I know you might have to run off shortly. I don't know if you have to leave just now, but feel free, guys, to say something.
I'm around, so
your question. Okay, cool. Yeah, put your questions in the chat or something like that, or the Q&A, and
I'll just pull a comment or two from Facebook Live here. Marianne Hussein has asked, how will the funds collected from entries for this competition be used?
how will the funds collected from the entry be used? That's what you broke up there, so I didn't hear what you said.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yep. How will the funds be used? I can answer that myself. The funds per entry would go to the TTPS to cover their hosting and management, and they'll be doing a lot of the heavy lifting for managing the photos and the judging. And then it's the sponsors that would be covering the prizes and other costs.
And to clarify, the TTPS is a Trinidad and Tobago Photographic Society.
Yes, TT-PS.
Yeah. In this case. Any other questions from the Facebook chat?
Let's see. No, that looks like a bit. We've covered it. Okay. See if any other questions come in. Okay. Here's another one coming in by chat. Can you tell more about the groups involved? So I think we can do that. So TTPS, so like Faraaz just mentioned, it is not the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. It is the Trinidad and Tobago Photographic Society. I've seen some of their webinars. They can make this joke. I know Chad won't be upset with me here. Yeah, it's a really terrific group. I got to meet Chad and Sarita, who are in the management team, over a year ago. If you're a photographer in Trinidad and Tobago, you may know that they very often do a pretty fantastic annual photo competition. And like many organizations, these are strange times, and putting on certain programming can be a challenge. And so over the last year, we've just had conversations about, hey, could we do something as part of your competition that would promote conservation? And then as time went on, we realized we might be able to do this as a special version of their annual competition entirely. So as a real first, I just really have to give it to TTPS, the Photographic Society, that they have taken this exciting, I think, step forward in embracing a full conservation-oriented competition. And I'm really excited to see what their membership comes up with. And I think it's just it's a really nice opportunity of them exploring new horizons. Ourselves as Nurture Nature campaign, this is a social marketing and advocacy campaign based in Trinidad and Tobago that has come out of a whole community of conservationists here that have been long concerned by the wildlife trade. Has long origins, and it is very likely one of the largest illegal and even if it's not illegal, very harmful wildlife trades in the entire region of the Caribbean. Just astounding numbers come over, and astounding numbers never make it to shore, sadly. So this is as an advocacy campaign, is a coalition-based project that came together a couple of years ago I'm involved as a dissertation researcher, so I will have investigated different aspects of how the trade works, but with real interest on how we can connect with people and the audiences before us. So learning how to talk with pet keepers, for instance, and learning what the issues are that they have. So that's a little bit about Nurture Nature, but if you want to learn more, nurturenature.tt.org. TTPS also has tt-ps.com, if I recall correctly. I know we got a slide next that would .org. I'm sorry about that. We've got it on the next slide. And then Faraaz, you're not quite an institution yet, but maybe, yeah, Faraaz Abdool is the third partner. I guess I would leave it to you, if Faraaz, if you want to share more about how you came into this experience.
Yeah, I'm an individual, really, not an organization. But yeah, just someone who's passionate about conservation and witnessed a large degree of environmental degradation, a large degree of environmental crime that goes largely unnoticed and unpunished over the years, or over a short space in time generally. So yeah, just another person who wants to make a difference, to make a positive difference to the country that I'm from, really and truly. You know,
Great.
But yeah, like we live in a beautiful place. We have a really beautiful country. Our islands are absolutely gorgeous, right? And you can be surprised, right? You can be really, really surprised. I had a very rarely seen migratory bird showed up in our backyard a couple of days ago, right? So biodiversity can be found anywhere, right? You don't have to go any fancy place to see it. All you got to do is to just to be aware, and observe, right? I'm seeing one more question here. Kareem is asking, can elements of macro photography be used in a wild and beautiful category? Absolutely, please do. There's a lot more coverage is needed in terms of macro photography.
I got one more question coming in on the Facebook Live. Is the competition only open to members of the Trinidad and Tobago Photographic Society? No, it is in the spirit of their annual competition, but is not members only. The only pricing structure is whether you're youth or adult, or early bird, or, well, not early bird. And I would maybe have one question myself I thought might be nice to include in a recorded Q&A. Eladio, I'm going to toss this one to you. What is, in your experience, what do conservation photography competitions look like in the Caribbean, you yourself from the Dominican Republic?
There hasn't been one. This is the first. So yeah, so there's a lot of nature, I think not a lot, but there's nature competitions. There's nature categories within competitions, but I believe this is the first time an organization has proposed a conservation photography, competition. So this is great. This is groundbreaking. I'm excited to see the results with the submissions. I'd love to see how many people would love to accept the challenge. I realize most of the participants are probably not necessarily conservation photographers, but might be interested in experimenting with the subject. So yeah, this is going to be great. I think this is going to be a first.
I'm seeing another question here. If we're taking pictures of illegally kept animals in captivity for the captive lives or captured lives category, is there any safety or ethics issues to consider? Now, I would say your personal safety And Eladio, I don't know if you'd like to elaborate further on that.
Yes. Well, there's two, I guess, situations that can present themselves. One is a guy who's illegally trading or commercializing animals, in which case, yes, your safety is of great concern. But you have to be creative if that's the case. And, now, some countries are still, very actively using face masks. Maybe if your subject, if you ask him if he'll, I don't know, pose for a portrait with the captive animal or something, you may want to ask him to wear his a mask, to protect him, because he's being truthful and open to you, but you don't want to get him arrested because he's precisely he's trusting in you, and you want to get a message out there. You want to have a conversation with him about it. He may have no alternative with respect to what he's doing. In my experience, most people who are doing something wrong like this don't think they're doing something wrong, and they're very open to, or not very, but most of them are open to you photographing them if you are friendly. And then the other situation that might present itself is someone who's a pet owner. And in the case of the Dominican Republic, and this might be the case also in Trinidad and Tobago, we have an endemic parrot and a parakeet. And the parrots are very attractive for people to keep as pets. There's a law that says you can't, but it's still a very popular pet, around. So, if you're photographing someone with their pet, that person will have feelings for that animal. You may want to focus on the relationship, that person has with the animal, and maybe try to portray it in your photograph. You don't want to get that person in trouble either, but maybe you want to photograph the hand feeding the bird, or the person with his back towards the camera, and you see his hand extending with the bird perch on his finger. So, every photographer is going to have a different idea of how to approach it, but you have to be mindful that, you are a witness and you are documenting something that might get someone in trouble, and you don't want to get that person in trouble because that person opened themselves up to you and trusted you. So you don't break that trust, and you want to portray the problem. Also, I think it's important that when you write the captions, it's so easy nowadays to judge, when people are, acting in a manner that we deem inappropriate or not, or bad or good, these terms, bad, good. The caption will be a lot better if you take the judging out and you stick to the facts. You are, in a sense, a photojournalist, and you are covering a situation, a problem, pet trade. Stick to the pet trade, and don't try in the caption to be very careful about not judging your subjects and their particular situations.
Nice. Thank you for that. I'm sure a lot of people got some ideas for that. Hope you all were taking notes. Any other questions? Okay. Any prompts or rules? Yeah. For what animals are biodiversity in danger or wild and beautiful? Yeah, this is a good point that we have a wild invasive species and we have wild native species. So generally, An animal that is invasive would fall under the category of biodiversity in danger, because that is endangering the native biodiversity that we have here. The presence of an invasive species endangers native biodiversity. Animals that are native, that would fall under wild and beautiful, for the reason that it's something that is potentially an ecotourism draw for the country. So yeah, again, research your subject, and of course, if you'd like to ask any questions, you can feel free to reach out to myself personally, or the Nurture Nature campaign, or the Trinidad and Tobago Photographic Society, or if you want to reach out to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service as well, you can. But I can't guarantee that they'll answer your questions about this photo competition. But yeah, as for prompts or rules, we can try to work on something, but I'm trying to avoid providing a list of animals, or a list of even the type of pictures that we want, because I don't want to put any limits on possible entrants, or any limits on submissions, in a sense of creative imagery. Anything else? I hope that answers the question. I think we're okay. I think we're all squared up for questions and answers. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that covers it. Scroll once more through Q&A. Yeah, that looks it looks like we hit it all. So we've just got some social media links for anyone who's looking to get in touch with Eladio or Faraaz. They have some fantastic images. I highly recommend you check them out. And for the photographers with us who are intrigued and perhaps excited to participate, to join us on this journey, you can find plenty more information on the TTBSDC.org website, Nurturing the Wild Photo Contest. You can also go to Nurture Nature Campaign on Facebook, Instagram. You'll find all the links there. Same for Faraaz as well. And we very much look forward to hearing from you guys, and seeing what can be made and shared here in Trinidad and Tobago. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Faraaz. Thank you, Eladio. Very much appreciate your time tonight. And yeah, I look forward to the next. The start of this competition is January 1, so the time is approaching.
Oh, before we go, I just have
All right.
one thing. I just have one thing to say. We are accepting entries from, I believe, 3 years ago. It's either I have to double check the rules actually. If you just give me a quick second, or if you remember it offhand, Mark.
Say that one more time. My internet flipped out.
Yeah, the rules say that we are accepting images that you don't necessarily have to have taken them within the past year, but you need to have taken them within 4 years. So I just wanted to say that. So if you have anything in your archives, right, maybe not from 10 years ago, but only 4 years from the start of the competition, 4 years before the start of the competition. So that is anything on or after January 1st, 2018. So yeah, because I know a lot of us haven't been going out a lot because of obvious reasons. So yeah, so you can check your library, and from January 1st, 2018 up until the present day. So I just wanted to say that before we close off. So yeah.
Great, great. Thank you, Faraz. Well then, guys, I'll cut the recording here, and I will see you guys. See you, Faraz, in one more webinar ahead for those watching these as recordings. And yeah, otherwise, you guys take care for now.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Bye, everyone.